What's up, YouTube? It's been a while since our last video. I hope you guys have been doing well. We've got some great videos coming up, starting with this 8-foot by 8-foot shed build. My wife and I are running into a situation where our storage bills have doubled in the last year. We're at $400 a month for storage. So as we're trying to rebuild our house, we're feeling the money crunch just like everybody else. So we need to get rid of the storage and build our own storage on site so we can nip those bills in the bud. So this week, we're going to be building this 8-foot by 8-foot shed, and I'm going to show you in detail how I do it. So you see, I've got 8 footers dug and ready to go for the new frame. The first thing I'm going to do is get my 8-foot by 8-foot perimeter frame put together, and then I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. Now make sure when you put your frame together, you put your cut piece on the inside and not on the outside. That way your frame will be 8-foot by 8-foot when it's finished. Okay guys, if you run into a problem like I have here, where the lumber, it's just crappy, okay? And it really won't line up well. You're not going to make good corners with this, probably 8 times out of 10. So here's how you fix that. Take a piece of scrap, 2x4, or anything that's just wide enough to get a good grip on the wood with the clamp. Put a couple screws in it, and you're going to hold that away at about the same distance that you need to draw it in, okay? And once you've got that in place, you just crank the clamp until it draws it in. And we'll be nice and flush here in just a minute. Oh yeah. Now that's looking great. And I'm nailing this together with 16s. I'm not using screws on this frame. So it's going to hold together great. Once you've got your frame in place, you need to get it square. And that's not so easy with dimensional lumber. So what you need to do is, when you get it squared up, put a board in each corner and lock it down with a couple of screws. That way you know once you get it square, or as square as you can get it, that it's not going to move around on you while you're getting it leveled up into place. Okay, now that we've got the basic frame in place and I've got it locked square on all 4 corners, it's time to go ahead and level it up exactly where it's going to go. That way I can see if I need to trim up any of the holes to make some access for the 4x4 posts. Okay, when you're leveling up your frame, if you're working by yourself, the best way that I know to do this is to stiff leg it with a clamp and a 2x4. Once you've got it level, put it on a block, something like I've got it, something that's nice and stable. Once you've got it level, you already know that you're square because you got it locked up on all 4 corners. So once you've got it level and you've got a clamp holding it in place, take a screw. Don't use nails on this. Take a screw, and just lock it in place. Now do that on all 4 corners. That way your frame is squared and leveled. Okay, I've got all of my corners set in concrete. I'm using 80 pounds in each hole, and I'm also putting rock firmly in the ground against the post just to make sure that nothing wobbles and comes loose. Also, make sure you compact the ground. You don't want to be putting posts on loose ground. So right here on these side posts, although we do them differently, I'm going to show you. I've got some pavers here landscape pavers, which work out great. I'm not using them for anything else. So just put it down in the hole, and now I'm going to tamp it pretty solidly with a heavy bar. Make sure it's resting good and solid, and then I'll show you what I do next. And actually, let me show you how I do this. All right, so you just want to tap it down, make sure everything's good and solid, and do that on all sides. Every post that you have, just make sure everything's on solid ground. Okay, now for these side bracing, I'm just using some treated 2x6s I have setting around. Go ahead and get one cut and make it a little bit less than the height of your frame so it doesn't come over the top. And once you have that, you just screw that to the side of the frame, and I'll show you what I do on the outside. I put a little cripple on the outside as well. This stuff is just temporary. However you want to attach the shed that you're building, just that's how you're going to do it. So let me show you how this looks after I get finished. And now I take these cripples and I cut them and screw them in place right here. They're about 6 inches long, and they hold up the weight that I'm going to have in this shed just fine. And so this is how one of the side legs looks when it is installed and before I have concrete in it. All right, next I'm going to pour concrete in. And here's what it looks like with 80 pounds of concrete. And that's probably about a 22-inch hole that I dug, maybe 24. Put a block down at the bottom, tamped down real well, you know. So, and this is not a video about how to put a foundation in. This is just something I'm showing you guys kind of in addition to the shed build. This is, you know, this is really just a shed build. And matter of fact, I'm going to build another shed after this one, and it's going to be on the ground. So it's not even going to be set up like this at all. It's going to be the same shed, just set on the ground. So just do this on all of your corners, all of the sides, you'll be fine. Okay, so now that you've got your basic frame completely leveled, squared, and firmly attached to whatever it's ultimately going to be resting on, whether it's a foundation, whether it's prepared ground, whether it's footings like I've done here, whatever. Now you're ready to begin the next process of building this 8x8 shed. So I'm going to show you the next step right now. Make sure that you're 8 foot by 8 foot on this, because you can easily be over. Obviously, I've checked mine, it's 8 foot by 8 foot, but I have made the mistake before of not cutting the extra 3 inches off of 2 of my boards. So don't forget to do that, or you're not going to have a square. All right, the next step is the floor joist. And you can either attach your floor joist with joist hangers, or you can attach them with face nails with 16s or screws, whatever. And what I've done here is I've attached a 2x4 all the way across, 8 foot long, to the other end and clamped it. So what this is going to be is it's going to allow me to rest my floor joist and kind of act as a support, kind of like joist hangers in a way, all the way across. And do that on both ends, or put joist hangers all the way across, whatever you want. And I'll show you the next step. You've either got joist hangers or a couple of boards stretched across the outside of your frame, like I do, that's going to hold all of your joist at the top. You're ready to move on to cutting your joist for the frame. Okay, now it's time to install the floor joist. Again, you can use joist hangers, or you can face nail like I'm going to and have a support across both ends that's going to keep your floor joist in line with the top of the frame. Whatever you want to do is fine. I'm going to mark this on 16-inch centers. I'm using 2x6s, and I recommend 16-inch centers on this bare minimum. If you wanted to go 12-inch on center, you can, but it's up to you depending on what kind of weight you're going to be holding. You should have at least 5 2x6 floor joists cut at 93 inches, and they should be fitting really well. Now you can face nail these or screw either one if you don't have floor joist. All right, I've got 5 2x6 floor joists cut to 93 inches, and they fit perfectly. Now's a good time to mention, always crown your lumber up. If you don't know what that means, it means sight down the board, and if it goes up or down in one direction, has a slight bow, you want that bow to go up. So if you see a bow, mark it up and put that direction up. That will prevent you from having saggy floors and saggy roofs. So now we're just going to attach these. Again, we're on 16-inch centers, 5 2x6s, and I'm just going to center these on the 16-inch line, and I'm going to flush the top of it up perfectly and face nail it with some 16s. Now that I've got all 5 floor joists nailed with 3/16s in each, the next step is to put some screws at an angle through my little stretcher board, giving further support for the floor joist. I'll show you what that looks like next. Okay, when you've got at least one screw toe-nailed into each of the joists, you're good to go. Just toe-nail one in the side. That gridlocks the whole frame. You can put another stretcher board across the center if you'd like. I'm probably going to, I usually do. So that just stabilizes everything in the center as well. Okay, it's the next day. All of our concrete is dry, our posts are set. It's really strong and rigid. You should have a perfect 8-foot by 8-foot square, and 2 sheets of 23/32 OSB will fit perfectly on your shed. That's what I'm going to put on mine. You don't have to use OSB. I'm going to, because it's a little cheaper than plywood. Now that we've got our first sheet of 23/32 OSB down, and we know it fits like it should, we're going to go ahead and mark where it lies. So this way I can pull it up, put my Loctite glue on the tops of the joist, and then I can pull my OSB back in place with no problem and line it back up. So when you're putting on liquid nails or Loctite, whatever you're using for construction adhesive, it doesn't take a whole lot. It only takes a little bit. So you're going to want to run a small bead across the tops of all the joists, and then position your OSB down on top of that. You don't have to go crazy with this. Now, when you know you've got enough construction adhesive on the tops of your floor joist, just bring your OSB or your plywood right back to that mark you made a few minutes ago. Don't let it slide over because it'll drag the adhesive. Just kind of eyeball it in place as much as you can, especially if you're by yourself. It's not easy. And kind of drop it on the joist where it goes. That way you drag it as little as possible. Okay, some fine tuning and we'll be ready to start fastening this. All right, now that everything is positioned where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and nail it down. Now, the way I use my 8 coated sinkers is 6 inches in the field and 4 inches on the edge. About that much spacing in the field. And about this much spacing on all edging. Now when you're ready, go ahead and do the same thing on this side using your construction adhesive and then gliding the piece of OSB or plywood over. And now once you've got your second piece in place, just nail it the same way, about 6 inches in the field and 4 inches on the perimeter. Okay, so now we've got our 8x8 shed with the floor down and it's ready for walls. Remember to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next segment of this build where I show you how I frame the walls.